My name is Lana, and I'm a fan of sensual stories and explicit movies. I've put together a collection of the best stories that I'm sharing with you. Now, we're going to listen to a very special one. Let's go! It was a Sunday morning. My parents had gone off to church, as they did every weekend. I was enjoying some alone time, making my own offering on the altar of the porn gods, when I heard a timid knock at the door. I'd forgotten Kim was still home. She usually went to church with my parents, but she had just returned from a Christian summer camp yesterday, where she had been working as a counselor for the last 4 weeks. She'd been really upset when she got home. I hesitated, trying to think of an excuse to stop her coming in, but came up short. "Hold on!" I began, but the door had already clicked and was swinging open. I had grown complacent during her absence. Luckily, the muscle memory from my recent teenage years kicked in. Quick as a lightning, my hands did a rapid tuck, flip, and alt-tab. In the instant it took Kim to poke her head into my room, I was already staring blandly at a stupid time-sync game I ran permanently in the background for just such an occasion. "What, Kim?" I demanded, now mindlessly exploding rows of germs for no apparent reward of reasons. Why do people play these things when there is perfectly good adult stories available? "I'm bored," she sighed. "What are you playing?" "A game? Don't you have something better to do?" "Can I play?" Before I could say no, Kim bounced up to me and, without any warning, leaped into my lap. "Hey!" I yelled, hyper-conscious of the painful erection I was still sporting. That, and the very graphic video which was still running just beneath the thin skin of this pointless game. "I know this one. I have it on my phone. I'm really good. Here, let me show you." She placed her hand over mine and began guiding it to click on different colored gems. She giggled. "Wow, you're really bad at this. You've been on this level for like an hour." She began to animatedly give me notes on improving my gameplay. All I could concentrate on was how her butt was rubbing up against my shaft as she squirmed during her battle with the pixels on my screen. It was definitely not helping my situation. Kim had always been particularly innocent growing up, and her lack of awareness of my discomfort was rubbing me up the wrong way, literally. Or perhaps it was the right way. Either way, the situation was made a lot worse by the fact that we were both still in our pajamas. At 18, Kim was still what, before this day, I might have called underdeveloped. From where I sat, she had about as many curves on her as an arrow and a chest as flat as mine. The net result of this was she never felt the pressure girls her age usually did to conceal or play down their womanly attributes. She dressed and behaved in the way she had since she was a kid. It would have been endearing if it wasn't so annoying. I was becoming increasingly aware that the only thing between my cock and her were 2 very flimsy layers of material. She had not even registered the hard shaft bumping against her as she jiggled. Her top was even worse. It was a wisp-thin tank top with no bra or padding. Her mamilla stood out like buttons through the barely existent fabric. Hunched over my desk as she was, it hung off her chest, and if I craned my head around just a little more, I would have been able to see. "Get off, Kim!" I ordered suddenly, trying to slide her off my lap. Her butt was starting to feel incredibly good on my D, and had I really just been about to sneak a peek down my sister's top? "Just hold on," She narrowed her eyes at the screen. Just one more. Off. I shoved her off my lap with excessive force. My rolling chair slid backward from beneath her, and she landed hard on her flat ass. Beast! She spun her head from where she had been dumped and began spitting. All right, I was only playing. What's your Then she came face to face with my problem. The bulging problem I was scrabbling in vain to cover up. I deeply regretted showing her off in that moment. Her already big blue eyes widened to take up what seemed to be most of her face. Is that your... she asked, apparently more curious than mortified. I was feeling quite the reverse. Just get out, Kim, I yelled. I'm sorry. She cringed back from my outburst. I didn't know. Okay, was that from... you know? She looked away self-consciously. Color rose into her lightly freckled cheeks. No, Jesus, you're my sister, I gabbled. And you're... What? The color in her cheeks deepened and the expression on her face turned dark. Too boyish? Too flat-chested? She gestured towards her breasts, or rather, the lack thereof. Her mamilla were pointing back at me, accusingly through her tank top. Mentally, I backpedaled. I was in a no-win situation here, and I need to find the way out, with the fewest repercussions. No, Before I could finish, whatever half-formed excuse my brain was desperately trying to concoct, I was shocked into silence. Kim was crying. At least her liquid eyes were on the verge of spilling over. What had I done? Was she offended? Was she going to tell Mom? I wouldn't expect you to get it. Her voice quavered. Where the hell was this coming from? Get what, Kim? I was just relaxing in my room when you burst in here. What is it you wanted? Her tears made me feel bad, and feeling bad made me angrier at her for making me feel bad. She pulled herself up and replied in a wounded tone, Maybe I was just looking for someone to be kind to me. After the shitty camp I had, just one person. It was my mistake to think that that person might be my own brother. I sighed tiredly, and before I could think it through, said, Kim, sometimes bad thing happens. You don't have to go around making it other people's problem. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. With the change in her expression, you would have thought I'd slapped her. Do you know what they called me at camp? She shot back angrily. When I did reply, she deflated, sniffed, and said, Bee stinks. Her look of defeat hit me like a gut punch. I was a terrible brother. I'm sorry, Kim. Those counselors can be real bad guys. They're a tight-knit bunch. I know. I've been there. I didn't mention that when I had been a camp counselor before I became a godforsaken heathen, I'd been part of the group that made up the names for the others. No, not the counselors. The kids. They all called me names. I tried to rise above it, turn the other cheek and all that, but it wore on me. For weeks I had to put up with their snotty jibs, and even then I nearly made it. Clearly, this had been weighing on her. As she talked, the story came out faster and faster, like she was exercising herself of the ordeal. You know, on the last night when they have camp awards. I nodded. I remembered. They always have a big ceremony and hand out dumb awards like cleanest bunk and best outdoorsman. We also used to make up a bunch of ones that we thought were hilarious at the time, but now, looking back, were probably a form of sexual harassment or at least some form of bullying. They called me up, said they had a special award for me. They said all the kids at the camp had voted and decided I deserved it. I didn't ask her to continue, but she did anyway. I went up. I thought maybe I was going to get some appreciation for all the shit they put me through. A good sport award or something. Do you know what they gave me? She choked out the words. I shook my head, not meeting her tear-stung eyes. A tube of calamine lotion and a certificate for the worst case of bee stings they had ever seen. I winced. I cried. I cried in front of the entire camp, kids, counselors, everyone, and they just laughed. Mark, they all just effing laughed. I cringed in my chair. I could not ever remember Kim cussing like this before. I reached out a tentative hand, but stopped just short of touching her. It's okay, Kim. They're a bunch of idiots. I'm sure they didn't mean it. They did, and they were right. Most of the 12-year-olds there had bigger boobs than me. I'm sorry, Kim. I could not think of more to say. Hearing my sister talk about her boobs, watching her fighting her tears, my effing erection, which was still not going down, it was all making me very uncomfortable. She dashed away the tears with one hand and appeared to regain some of her composure. Is it true? Am I so unattractive, Mark? Kim, it's okay. You know, about earlier. Her eyes darted down to where my hand still covered my still mostly erect D. I don't mind, really. I've listened to the other girls. I know it happens to boys. Was it really just for me sitting there? Kim! My face burned red hot. I had absolutely no idea how to get myself out of this hole. You can tell me. It's okay. If I'm 100% honest, I'd take it as a compliment. The wide-eyed expression, bordering on excitement, was heartbreaking to see. Kim, I looked down and shook my head. I could either destroy my fragile sister or lie and tell her she'd given me wood. My no-win situation just got a little more unwinnable. Something seemed to click for her then. Maybe my eyes had unconsciously darted to my monitor. Regardless, her face paled, and she said, "Oh," then glancing down at my computer, "Oh!" Kim, I tried to get up, but the damn chair kept sliding out from under me, and she was already right there. A mouse click later, and we were both staring at a screen crammed to bursting with bare flesh. Worst of all was that the scene I had been enjoying depicted two women of particularly generous proportions attending delightfully to each other while at the same time they serviced a man of equally generous physical attributes. Kim's face fell. She pushed off my desk and began robotically heading for the door. Kim! I shouted after her, but she was already gone. I heard the door to her room slam. I swore under my breath. My eyes went back to the scene on the screen. For a moment, I titled my hand as my male brain considered finishing off what I'd started. Now that I finally had a moment to myself, cursing myself for being such a caring brother, I angrily closed my browser down and stood up from my chair. Kim, I called loudly while tapping softly at her door. Go away! I could hear the tears in her voice. I swore again. I really didn't want to get involved in this, but having a crying sister to explain to my parents when they go home and would have been a lot worse, especially if Kim gave them all the glory details. It would be a lot harder to get out of church in the future if that happened. So, I took a deep breath and opened the door. Kim was on her bed, hunched over, crying into her hands. Leave me! She sobbed pathetically. I'm sorry, Kim, I sighed. I don't know what I did wrong, but I'm sorry. I really hoped that would be enough and I would be able to live. It was not, and I could not. Of course, you don't know. You're just like every other guy. You're only interested in these butts and big breasts. That's not true. Maybe it was a bit true. Wait, why am I defeating myself to you? I didn't do anything wrong here. But Kim had momentum now. She kept on talking as if I had said nothing. The same thing that happens wherever I go. I become invisible. No boy wants to even talk to a girl which still looks like she hasn't hit puberty. Kim, isn't this a conversation you should be having with Mom? I shifted uncomfortably. I desperately wanted to leave. I've tried, but she doesn't get it. She has boobs. She tells me that guys will notice me for my personality, but that's just nonsense. I was surprised. I was not used to this very emotional Kim who wanted to have adult conversations with me. It is bullshit, but I'm not ugly, am I? Her voice pleaded with me. Kim, I'm your brother. I honestly can't judge. Just look at me. What's wrong with me? I glanced at her and sighed. Nothing, Kim. You're not just lying to make me go away. You'd tell me if I was repulsive, right? Yes, Kim. I'm your brother. I would tell you if you were repulsive. Hell, I probably have told you exactly that once or twice when we were growing up. You did. She folded her arms across her meager chest. To be fair, you were a pimply, brace-faced back then. You used to have a mullet. Her eyes narrowed, but at least her tears had stopped. It was ironic. I massaged my closed eyes. Look, the point is, you're not repulsive now. I don't know what problem the other campers had, but it has nothing to do with you, okay? Then look at me. I did. No, I mean actually look at me this time and tell me what makes me so forgettable. She stood up from the bed and held her arms out at her sides. Reluctantly, I raised my head and gave her another quick glance. Nothing. You're fine, Kim. Look at me, she insisted. I am. I moaned back at her like a whiny child. Pretend I'm not your sister. Are you doing that? Yes, I spoke through gritted teeth. Now, am I attractive? Do you think guys will find me pretty? Knowing now she would not let up, I considered to look at her properly this time. I even did as she said, and tried not to see her as my sister. Oh, I said, a little surprised. What? She suddenly looked self-conscious. Her hand reached across her middle to hold her other arm. She looked so vulnerable like that. Nothing. I shook my head, feeling a little heat in my cheeks. I can admit that for a moment, just a moment, mind you, I saw how pretty my little sister was. Sure, she was skinny, with hardly any definition to her body, but if you took a moment to take it all in, she was beautiful. Her face was perfectly symmetrical, with wide blue eyes, which, until today, always seemed to twinkle with a joke that only she understood. Her breasts were ripening little buds, and her waist was so slender I could probably have encircled it with both of my hands. Even her butt, which I had first thought flat, had a seductive little curve to it. Shit, I thought. Kim is effing hot. Tell me, she ordered. She brought her hands up to cup the ear in front of her barely existent breasts. It's my bee-sting boobs, isn't it? No guy wants a girl with such a flat chest. No, I bulged harder. Those are, cute. Shit, what was I saying? She was infected my brain. I'd have to watch what came out of my mouth. Really? Her voice went up a couple of octaves. To some guys, sure. Not to me. You're my sister. But I don't think guys would have a problem with them. To be honest, most guys are only really interested in a nice face. I looked down at the floor. And you have one. Silently, I told myself to shut up. A face? A nice face. I mean, you're my sister. I made sure to stress this point yet again. But I can tell that you have the kind of face guys might find attractive. You're just saying that. Her voice sank again. I'm not, I replied a little quicker than I intended. Christ, I wish I wasn't, I added in my head. It's nice, she added helpfully. Yeah. And my breast? Jesus, Kim! I threw up my arms in expression. Just be honest. It is also very nice. I jerked my head as I spoke, not once looking in her direction. You're not even looking at them. I've looked, I began, then realized my error. Shit, I had nothing. I really needed to shut the F up. Will you look at them? No way. Just give me an objective opinion. I muttered another curse word, then flicked my eyes in the direction of her chest before flicking them away again. They're fine, I mumbled. No, I mean look at them. She emphasized the word look. It took me a while to understand, until I saw her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her tank top out of the corner of my eye. Nope, no way, I jumped up. I can't do that. I don't believe in hell, but all the same, I have no intention of taking the risk. Thank you very much. Come on, she stamped a dainty foot. Thanks to you, I already feel 1,000,000 times better than when I woke up this morning. Can't you just give me a quick, objective opinion? It won't cost you anything. If only she knew. Besides, her expression turned sly as she added, from what I saw earlier, you're somewhat of an expert on breast. Well, I don't like to brag, I thought, then told my brain to shut the F up and insisted out loud. I'm not looking at my sister's breast. Just a peek, she queried, her hands tugging up her shirt to expose the tight muscles of her flat belly. Forget it, Kim. I insisted, but found my eyes remained fixed on her. I willed them to look away, but they didn't budge. Stupid eyes! Pretty, please? They hardly count as boobs anyway, so it's technically not breaking any rules. The tank top was raised to reveal the pale white skin that was just the Paris mound, barely discernible from the rest of the chest. Frozen, I felt my mouth run dry. In the mixture of rising panic and elation, the words I needed failed to form. Slowly, her top crept up, revealing more and more, until I found myself staring at her bare chest. I am definitely going to hell, I whispered. Still, I could not tear my gaze away. Her areolas were silver dollar-sized domes of pink perfection. You could hardly see her mamillas. They were so delightfully cushioned by the marshmallowy richness of the surrounding flesh. I tried to speak, but still nothing came out. Not much to look at, I know. She looked down grimly at herself. No, I finally croaked out. Then, seeing her expression and sensing she had taken this the wrong way, I hurriedly explained. Yes, they're seriously not that bad. She winced, and my words came tumbling out before I could properly consider them. Wait, it's like you said, I've seen a lot of breasts, in pictures mostly, but that still counts. And yours are really pretty. I couldn't tell her that she had probably just ruined big breasts for me. These little nubbins of delight were so perky and delectable, they made me salivate. They made something else occur as well. I heard Kim giggle. I tracked the path of her vision. My mind had been reeling and hadn't noticed what was happening until now. Suddenly, I felt it and looked down. Whoa! I tried to cover it up, but did a terrible job. My pajama shorts offered nothing in the way of concealment either. It's nothing. I made to leave. Wait! I could hear the smile in Kim's voice. What? I paused impatiently at the door. Is that for me? No! I sounded scandalized. It's for me. From these. She nodded down to her sweet bosom. Not from the Eros side. Jesus! I punched the door jamb. It's nothing, just a biological reaction. Just ignore it. I'm complimented, really. Kim. I'm in it. If I can get this reaction from my own brother, there might be hope for me yet, right? I guess. My face was hot. I desperately wanted to escape. I took another step without looking back. Will you feel them? There was a new tone of cheeky confidence in her voice. I think I preferred it when she was crying. I can't. That would be so wrong. My mouth said, but my stupid legs had stopped walking of their own accord. You've touched my arm before, though, she wheedled. Yes, but... And my leg? My stomach? Not deliberately. Certainly not since we were little. Your hands touched my butt earlier, when you showed me. And I said I was sorry, but it's not the same. What difference does it make? It's just some of your skin touches some of my skin. It doesn't matter where those parts are, does it? She took a step closer to me. I think it does. She stepped closer again. I failed entirely to move. She was only an arm's length away. It's nothing, Mark. Think of yourself as a doctor giving an opinion. They're small, but Will you just tell me if they feel good? Will you tell me if you think I should get them, you know? She mouthed the next word. Enlarged. No, Kim. My voice whined with reluctance. But it was faint reluctance. I was worried about what might happen if I let this go any further. I was starting to have strange thoughts about Kim. They were dark thoughts, and I was scared to let them float to the surface of my mind for fear of what it would do to my relationship with my sister, with my family. But Kim seemed to be growing in confidence, probably because as I stood half-turned in the doorway, my erection was still painfully in evidence. She'd snuck so close to me, I could feel the heat coming off her bare flesh. I watched in a hypnotic stupor, unable to look away. Unwillingly, I took in more infatuating details, like her slightly protruding navel. An unbidden thought of what it would feel like to prod that little button with my tongue flashed across my thoughts. I dismissed it, but it was immediately replaced with the observation that her wigs at camp had left her with the crispy defined tan lines of her one-piece swimsuit. Most of her skin had a healthy bronze tint, but where her swimsuit had covered her, she was still a virginal, unspoiled white. It was a rabbit facing down a stalking predator, hoping stillness would be my camouflage. I knew it had failed when her hand closed on mine. Her hand was cool, with a bird-bone lightness and fragility. With surprising strength, that hand guided mine up towards her chest. I say it was strong because surely I must have resisted. Yet she didn't seem to put in any effort to raise my hand and place it in such a way as to encircle her hillock of flesh. The first thing I felt was the shock of her body heat contrasted with her cool hand. Next, I was surprised by the luxurious softness of her breast, barely rising above her ribcage. I'd expected, perhaps, to feel the hardness of bone beneath, but this was all pillowy, springy flesh of palpable goodness. I felt my head tighten involuntarily into a cup shape to cover the petal softness of her skin. Well, she demanded, pushing out her chest a little, as if that might improve my ability to form an opinion. It certainly did. It helped me confirm just how perfect her little titties were. Good, I groaned slightly. They feel really good, just... I couldn't help myself then. Without volition, I found my thumb and forefinger closing on her mamilla and giving her tender pink flesh the barest pinch. I didn't know human skin could be so soft. My fingers pressed into the shallow flesh, and she gave a small gasp as I found myself giving her knob the gentlest of tugs. I was horrified by my body's betrayal, but to be fair, hers was actually traitorous. I felt her mamilla stiffen between my fingers and saw her teeth bite down on her bottom lip. They're really not that bad, she prompted. I nodded slowly, my eyes transfixed in disbelief at where my fingers were now rolling my sister's purred blood between them. The problem I was having with dry mouth now seemed to be cured, and if anything, I was having trouble trying to slow down my salivary glands as I mumbled, "Promise me you'll never try to make this bigger." She gave a shy giggle, twisted at the waist, clearly enjoying the effect her body was having on mine. They're okay then? Her expression was endearingly sincere. I suddenly became incredibly aware of just how close we were to each other. I could smell the scent of her hair. Worse than that, over a minute must have passed, and I was still blandly groping my sister's breast. Would a guy get turned on by them? I am sure a guy would. I stressed the words. A guy. A guy? What about you? Shit. She saw, though, my cunning misdirect. Kim, you were my little... Oh my! I was taken completely by surprise as I felt a hand come to rest on my crotch. Her hand, my D, was rock hard, and there was no doubt she could feel every inch of it through the fabric of my pajamas. Even in my state of shock, I still didn't let go of her breast. This is just from little old me? I hesitated over the right answer to give her. I knew it was too late to blame it on the Euro site now. Added to that was the fog of confusion thoughts towards my sister, which now clouded my mind. Before I could think of an adequate excuse, any excuse, she wrong-footed me again, asking, Can I see it? Huh? Can I see your... you know? Her eyes dipped down and then lingered on where her hand was, gripping me. I've never seen a real one. I thought maybe, since we're sharing and all... Her glance moved to where, for the life of me, I cannot explain why, I was still groping her chest. And I do mean groping, finding no resistance and freed from the control of my stupefied brain. My hand had begun to massage slow circles into my sister's breast tissue. Kim. My thoughts were slowed. I blamed the volumes of blood being diverted away from my brain. I was still uncertain what was actually happening, and I was in two minds about whether I wanted it to stop. Just a peek. She pushed out her bottom lip in a pretty pout, and I found, though my mind screamed no, my body was entirely falling to respond. That was how, before I knew it, her slim little hand was tugging the cords loose on my pyjama pants. Again, not a muscle in my body responded. All it did manage was an involuntarily nervous giggle as her hand slipped down and cupped my manhood. Yep, her hand was still cold. There I was, with my sister, who'd always assumed was probably destined to be a virgin married to Jesus, with her fingers wrapped around my junk, and it was the greatest thing I'd ever felt. She pulled it out into the open and gave it a lengthy appraisal. I could not look at her face, terrified at what would happen if we made eye contact. It's pretty big, she cooed. I risked a glance down. Yep, that was very definitely my bare D in the hand of my little sister. I had not hallucinated that. Are they all that big? Dunno, I grunted. The only other ones I've seen have been in video, and I have a feeling those guys skew the average somewhat. Skew the average somewhat? My mind was definitely having a meltdown. It's, what's the word you used? Oh yeah, nice, she giggled. Cool. I sounded anything but. So, was it what you expected? I guess. I was expecting it to be... I don't know, really. I've heard they were gross looking. But yours is nice, I offered this time. You should be a poet. She was still holding my D. My sister was still holding my D. I was not sure things could get more awkward, and then she asked, "Do you touch it while you're watching arrow videos?" Kim, I tried to sound exasperated. I know I should have stopped her, but it felt so good to have her hold me like that. I found myself willing her to stroke me, just a little, purely for educational purposes. "Do you do it like this?" My wish was granted, and she started stroking my cock. I cried out, my knees almost bucking, and she said, "Sorry, was I doing it wrong?" "This is wrong! So wrong! I mean, not that." I motioned to her hand. "But this!" Unhelpfully, I motioned to her hand again, only with more emphasis. "Look," I laughed nervously. "Maybe we should just stop right here, go our separate ways, and pretend this never happened." "I'll let go when you let go." She smiled up at me. I looked to see what she meant. "Shit, sorry." I found that while I had been understandably preoccupied, my second hand had joined the first. I hated my hands. My hands were devious a-holes who were going to get me into deep, deep shit. Each one was now massaging one of her little mounts. "Why? I'm not sorry. That feels really good." "Oh God." "Just relax. I'm only curious. I can't talk to anyone about this stuff, and it's not like we're hurting anyone. Just tell me what boys like. I might not have the right kind of body to please a man, but maybe there are other things I can learn. Will you show me?" "I can't," I began, but trailed off into a groan as she squeezed down on my shaft. Was that better? "Stop, Kim, you really shouldn't." "It was like this, wasn't it?" She squeezed and stroked me again, and I had to stop talking to stifle another moan. I moved to cover her hand with mine, but all I managed to do was tighten her grip and slow down the next attempt she made to stroke my D. It just made it all the more pleasurable. "Oh, like that." She nodded, watching my expression change, even the attentive student. "Oh," I broke off again as she began to stroke my length slowly but firmly. "Okay, so that's it. See? I'm learning so much already." My automaton thumb, meanwhile, found her mamilla again and was rubbing it in roughly circles. "That feels wonderful," she sighed as she worked my D. "I like to play with them. They're so sensitive. But it feels like a million times better when you do it." Perhaps because I was already primed for my video session, or else it was the rawness of having my own sister give me a caress. Either way, I was on a hair trigger. Realizing this, I tried to hold Kim's hand with my own and opened my mouth to stop her. But all that came out was another pained groan. Then it happened. A hot, very loud shot gonged out and splattered my sister's flat stomach. She squealed appreciatively, but it was so unexpected neither of us had time to react. She just stood there in a minute state of shock as I coated her lower half in a thick white glaze. "Wow!" Kim laughed. "Shit. Does it always spew that much?" "I'm sorry. It's so warm." "Oh God, I'm so effing sorry." "And sticky." "Oh shit, what have I done?" That was not all what I was expecting. "Christ, what have I done? F. Mom is going to have an aneurysm. Shit. Dad is going to cut my D off. Oh, relax. They won't find out. We were just experimenting, remember? That was fun. She grinned widely and big flush boomed on her cheeks. Christ, Kim, look at what I did to you. She looked down at her body and tuttled softly, saying, You certainly did make a mess. These will have to go in the wash for a start. At that, she hooked her thumbs into her shorts and asked, You don't mind, do you? Huh? I guess it's only fair since I've seen yours. She giggled again and then tucked down her sleep shorts. Yep, Kim was now completely naked. I just openly goggled at my sister's kitty. She'd still been my kid sister in my mind until this point, but the sight of that tidy thatch of pubic hair above her kitty made me completely recalibrate that view. Such a messy boy, she muttered, using her shorts to dab up the smears of my semen still on her stomach and thighs. Realizing I was staring at her, she paused and gave me a curious look, asking, What? Shit, Kim. I just came on you. This is a pretty big deal. Only if you make that way, I can help but think of it as a compliment. A very sticky compliment. But I appreciate the vote of confidence. She gave me a sly look and then asked, Seeing we've already gone this far, would you look at my butt? Your butt? I was flabbergasted. I was still feeling ashamed, trying to cover up my waning cock, and now Kim was asking me to check out her ass? Is it too flat? She turned as she asked and presented her slender bottom to me. I couldn't stop myself looking now. I was in far too deep. In clothes, her butt seemed to lack definition, but naked, it was fantastic. What it lost in her sheer mass, it made up for in toned partness. It was the butt of an athlete, muscular and so tight, I'm surprised she didn't bounce back up every time she sat down. It's good, I managed. I don't see any problems. It is? She sounded relieved. But what does he think? She pointed to my covered crotch. I'm sure he would like it. He just can't get excited again. Not so soon afterward. You know. Oh. She actually sounded a little offended. But it is a very decent butt. A plus. I mean, I'm sure other guys would think so. It's cute. Finished lamely. Okay, she brightened. Growing bashful again, she said, Can I ask you another personal question? Why not? I rolled my eyes skyward. Did it feel really good when I touched it? Because when I touch myself, her cheeks reddened and she indicated down to her crotch. It feels so nice, all tingly. Is it like that for you guys too? I guess, in the beginning at least. Then it kinda grows. It is surprising the candor you feel when you've just ejaculated all over your sister. Grows? Gets stronger until it kinda explodes. Explodes? Her blue eyes widened. Yeah, I mean, you got the full show there, live, from the splash zone. Fortunately, she ignored my chamois reference and mused. Oh, I guess it's different for girls. Not really, I said without thinking. Just not quite so messy. What do you mean? Have you never had an orgasm? Like the kinda explosion? She shook her head sadly. Oh. There was an uncomfortable silence, during which I made some subtle movements towards the door. I was almost out when she blurted out, "Will you teach me?" Teach you? About orgasms. I know about them. I just don't think I've ever had one. How do you know? You just know, trust me. I do trust you. That's why I'm asking. I was digging myself in deep here. She continued, It kind of felt like you knew what you were doing when you were playing with my mamillas. I wasn't playing with them. I was helping you. Helping you. I stopped talking because Kim had climbed up onto her bed and was busy spreading her legs. The effing sexiest set of legs I'd ever seen that came together at the prettiest little kitty on planet Earth. Maybe Saturn was real. He certainly knew how to do with a sinner like me. See? She began, touching a finger to the top of her slit, just above where the dark pink lips were parted to reveal a tiny hole, shiny with moisture. When I touch myself here, it feels amazing. I could play with it all day. She drew a slow circle around the small fleshy button while I stared on, unable to even blink. It was the most darling kitty I had ever seen. So delicate and ripe, the voices in my head were calling for me to taste it. Her mouth formed a thin-lipped smile of indulgence as she stroked the sensitive spot. I can't, Kim. He seems to like it, she grinned, her eyes only open a slit. What? God damn it! I looked down to see my cock was back up to attention. How's that even possible? You're a traitor. Here, you try. Her voice had grown husky. Next is going to be an overly explicit segment that I'm skipping due to YouTube restrictions. In the video description and in the comment section, you can find links to the full version of my stories in my Telegram channel, Lana Tales.